I've never talked about what I saw in that mystery box video until now. Those of you who followed me on YouTube may have noticed that I haven't been the same since that stream. Today, I'm going to tell you what I saw that night. My channel was growing fast at the time, and I was taking risks for the views, especially with live content, where people expect you to react in real time. Dark web boxes were pulling numbers, and I kept ordering them because the previous ones had been strange but harmless. That night I wasn't stressed or nervous before going live. I expected the same type of items I had already opened before, which were mostly props meant to look disturbing without actually being real. I set everything up, checked the camera, and started the stream like I always did. When the box arrived earlier that day, I noticed it was heavier than usual, but I didn't question it, because I was more focused on how I would present it during the stream. I started opening the box while talking to chat, reading comments, and keeping the energy up. That was part of the format people expected, and at first everything followed that same pattern without any issue. The first items were exactly what I thought they would be, and I treated them like props without hesitation. There was a rubber hand that bent in an exaggerated way, a fake eyeball that rolled across the table when I pushed it, and a small music box that played a broken melody that sounded more annoying than scary, so I laughed and kept the stream moving. Chat reacted normally, which made everything feel under control. Then I reached deeper into the box and touched something that didn't feel like the rest, and even though I kept talking, I slowed down because the texture was different and the shape didn't match any kind of prop I had handled before. I pulled it out carefully, still trying to keep the same tone. I held the sealed plastic bag up to the camera, and even before opening it, I knew it wasn't going to be something I could easily joke about because it didn't look staged or exaggerated. When I cut it open, the shift in the mood was immediate, even if I tried to hide it. Right before I opened the bag, there was a moment where I stopped moving and looked at it longer than I should have because something about the way it was packed felt deliberate, like it wasn't meant to be shaken or displayed but preserved. When the plastic opened, I looked down and saw fingernails inside, scattered without any order, and it took me a second to process what I was looking at because they didn't resemble fake props. The edges were uneven, and some of them had dirt under them in a way that didn't look manufactured. I tried to keep the tone light because I was still live, but my voice changed, and when I picked one up to show the camera, I noticed details that made it harder to dismiss as fake. Chat reacted fast, and while some people laughed, others told me to stop touching them, which made the situation feel heavier. I dropped the nails back into the bag and wiped my fingers on my shirt, not because it helped, but because I needed to do something, and then I reached back into the box to move on from that moment. When I pulled out the tools, the reaction from chat changed again, because they didn't look like props. The tools were small, metallic, and worn in a way that suggested use, not decoration. And holding them in my hand while knowing what I had just seen in the bag made it harder to keep pretending everything was part of a joke. There was a pause before I picked up the last item, and I remember staring at it for a few seconds because it was a plain USB with no label, and by that point, I understood that everything in the box was connected. Chat pushed me to plug it in immediately, and even though some people were joking, others insisted, which made the pressure feel real in a way that went beyond normal interaction. I told them I would check it, but not on stream, because I didn't want to risk showing something that could get me banned. I ended the stream earlier than planned, and even while wrapping up, I could tell people were confused because I didn't explain anything properly. As soon as the stream ended, the silence in the room made everything feel more serious, because I was no longer performing. I plugged the USB into my laptop and sat there for a while before opening the file, because I knew it would explain the rest of the box, and part of me didn't want that explanation. After a few minutes, I opened it anyway, because leaving it untouched felt worse. At the start of the video, nothing happened for several seconds, and that pause made it harder to watch, because it felt intentional, like the person who recorded it wanted the viewer to wait instead of reacting instantly. The camera was fixed on a chair in a bare room. When someone entered the frame with a creepy mask, the person in the chair was already tied, with their hands positioned. I leaned closer to the screen, and when the tools appeared, I recognized them immediately because they were the same ones sitting on my desk, which made it impossible to separate the video from my reality. I didn't pause it, even though I knew I should. The first nail didn't come off cleanly, and the person using the tool adjusted their grip while the person in the chair reacted, pulling against the restraints and moving the chair slightly across the floor. The audio confirmed everything, and there was no sign that it was staged. I kept watching, even when it became clear that the video was showing exactly how each tool was meant to be used, and the connection between the box and the video was direct, not implied. When the video ended, I stayed in front of the screen without moving. Everything I had just seen was still present in the room with me. The tools and the bag of nails were still on the desk. I immediately regretted opening that box and touching everything inside. The way the tools were used matched what I had in front of me. I stood up and went to the sink to wash my hands. I needed to break the moment with something physical. It didn't help. I didn't upload that video and I didn't talk about it at the time, both for me and for anyone watching. I packed everything back into the box and got rid of it that same night. I stopped streaming for a while and told people I needed a break, which was true, but not for the reasons I gave publicly. Most people accepted it and moved on. I know people are still making the same kind of content, and I know how easy it is to treat it like a game. But if you ever get something like that, don't open it, because now I can't stop thinking that they know my address and that I watched the video, and now you know too.
This is my story of how I discovered on the dark web that my father was a cannibal. I grew up in a house where my parents were always one argument away from losing control. I learned early how to disappear without leaving, and I spent most of my time online because it was the only place where I could focus on something else. At first, I stayed on normal sites, but over time I started looking for more extreme content because regular videos felt empty compared to what was happening around me, and I needed something that could actually hold my attention. I followed links into forums that were harder to find, and then into places where people shared things that felt wrong, but also hard to ignore. The deeper I went online, the easier it became to disconnect from everything else. My parents never noticed any of this. They were too busy fighting each other, and the house always felt unstable, like something could go too far at any moment. One night, the argument didn't stop, and it kept getting louder in a way that made it impossible to ignore, so I stayed in my room staring at my screen while the noise moved through the house. I heard something hit the floor with force, and my mother's voice changed in a way that made me pause even though I did not leave my room. There was a moment where everything went quiet. I waited without moving, trying to understand what was happening without opening the door. When the shouting started again, it sounded closer, and I could hear movement that didn't feel normal. Later that night, my mother came into my room holding a plate of food, and she avoided eye contact while placing it on my desk. Her voice was low and controlled, but it didn't match the tension from earlier. "Enjoy your meal. This is the last time I cook for you because your father is very angry with me. I did not ask questions, even though something about the moment stayed in my head. A few days later, she was gone. My life turned into a nightmare the day my father was arrested, accused of murdering her. After that, the house felt empty. It was hard to stay there, so I spent more time online to fill the silence and avoid thinking about what had happened. I stopped caring about everything else, and I kept going deeper into sites that showed worse content. One night, I reached a site that took longer to load, and when it opened, I saw a forum that focused on cannibalism. I told myself I should leave, but I stayed because I wanted to understand why people were speaking so casually about it. I started reading posts that described preparation methods and shared experiences, and the comments showed that people were engaged. The more I read, the more it felt like I had stepped into something that was not meant to be found by accident. As I kept scrolling, I found a post where the writing style felt familiar, and I slowed down because something about it matched patterns I had seen before. When I saw the username, I felt a clear sense of recognition, and I opened the profile because I needed to confirm what I was thinking. The profile had multiple posts written in the same tone, and the structure of the sentences matched the way my father used to write messages. I stayed on that profile going through older posts, and I started noticing that the dates matched events at home. I thought about closing the page, but I kept going because I needed to understand how far this went. A detailed account of something that had already happened. The timeline matched the night of the argument with my mom, and I started recognizing details that connected directly to my house. There was a part where he described preparing a meal that sounded familiar, and I realized it matched something I had eaten, which made me stop for a moment while trying to process what that meant. I went back to the memory of my mother bringing me food and what she said before leaving the room, and I started to understand that her words were not random. The connection between those moments stayed in my head and did not go away. I could not stop thinking about what I had eaten, and every memory of food from that time came back. I returned to the site because I needed more information even though I knew it would not help. I created an account and accessed private sections that were not visible before. Inside those sections, I found conversations that showed he was interacting with others who shared the same interests, and the tone of those messages made it clear that this was not just something he did alone. I found a message that stood out because it was recent, and the date showed it was sent after he had already been arrested, which did not make sense at first. When I opened it, I saw that it mentioned me directly, and he wrote about being careful and waiting for the right moment, which made me question what he had planned. He also wrote that I had been lucky. While I was processing that, a new message appeared from another account. The new message appeared instantly, that caused me a strong reaction because it suggested I was not alone. I read it carefully while trying to understand what it meant. You are not safe where you are. I looked around my room, paying attention to small details that I had ignored before, and I noticed that something felt slightly off. Another message appeared right after that. Listen carefully. I stayed still and focused on the door, and I heard a faint sound from the other side, like someone moving slowly without making noise, which made it clear that there was someone in the house. I grabbed a heavy object and positioned myself closer to the wall while watching the handle. The handle moved slowly, and the door opened enough for someone to step inside, so I reacted by swinging the object with force, which caused them to step back while still trying to reach me. I managed to get away and ran out of the room without stopping, moving through the house and out the front door as fast as I could without looking back, because I did not want to see who was behind me. I reached a neighbor's house and stayed there while trying to explain what had happened. The police came again and searched the house, but they did not find anyone inside, and they told me there were no signs of forced entry or struggle. They checked my room and found everything in place, including my computer. They suggested that stress might be affecting how I perceived things. They took the computer, and I thought that might be the end of it. A few days later, I received a message on my phone from an unknown number, and I felt a strong reaction before opening it because I had started to associate messages with something going wrong. I opened it because I needed to know. The message was short, but terrifying. Did you recognize the taste this time? Jamie Lee Arrow learned at a young age that her father had murdered and eaten her stepmother. Isa Kendrabad was convicted in 2010 for the murder and cannibalism. What made the case especially unsettling was not only the violence of the crime itself, but the calculated behavior that followed, since reports revealed that he documented parts of the act and showed a level of detachment that shocked investigators and the public alike.
was past midnight when I ran the script. I'd been digging through obscure parts of the deep web for weeks, looking for something different. Something not just illegal, but unexplained. I didn't want drug forms or torture streams. I wanted the forbidden type of information. The kind people whispered about in IRC channels and quickly deleted when moderators joined. I found the code buried in a private repository called Bridge Speak. Password protected dead link. Except it wasn't. I bypassed the lock with an outdated backdoor exploit, and there it was. A terminal-based chat client, stripped down to pure input-output lines. At the top it said, "For communication with beyond entities, do not break protocol." I didn't believe in ghosts or demons. This was just some edgy creepypasta crap, probably made by another bored hacker like me. But I was exhausted from porn dumps and stolen credit card forms. I needed something that didn't reek of the real world. So I ran the chat. It loaded instantly. No IP, no logs, just a blinking cursor and a message already waiting. It said, "You're not supposed to be here, Caleb." That was my name. No username, no device trace. I stared at the screen. I hadn't typed a thing. I checked my IP. Nothing outgoing. No packets, no server. Just the client and me. I typed back, thinking maybe someone had embedded a prank script. "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "You already know. You came looking for us." I felt a weird pressure in my chest. Not fear, but a kind of cold curiosity. I started asking more questions, assuming this was some AI chatbot messing with me. But the things it said weren't public, not even on my devices. It referenced my brother's pacemaker, my mother's insomnia, the scar I have on my lower back that no one else has ever seen. I was about to shut it all down, delete the repo, forget the night. But then it said, "If you leave now, we'll take your brother first. Look at his screen." The tension felt like a heavy rope tightening around my ribs. My hands hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't touch anything. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I opened the remote desktop app I had set up months ago to mess with my brother when he left his PC idle. It was still linked. I connected. The screen flickered, then loaded. His webcam light was on. He was sitting at his desk, staring at his monitor. Pale, almost frozen. I couldn't see what he was looking at, but whatever it was, it had him trapped. His eyes were wide, not blinking. Then I saw his mouth open slowly. He started shaking, at first like a chill, then violently. His body jerked back, slammed into the chair, then forward. His hands clawed at his throat. I saw foam spilling from his lips. His head twitched hard to the side and slammed against the corner of the monitor. Blood sprayed across the screen. I screamed. I actually screamed out loud. I yanked the power cord from the router, shut the laptop, but it didn't stop. The monitor was off, but the fan was still spinning. I turned it back on, and the chat was still there. "He's done. You're not." I begged them to stop. Said I believed them. Said I'd do whatever they wanted. My hands were shaking too much to type, so I just held them over the keyboard, waiting for what came next. A new message came. "You have one job. Entertain us. Make us want to keep you alive. Tell us secrets. Show us things. Suffer for us." I didn't understand what they meant by show, but then the web light turned on. I hadn't touched it. A line appeared in the chat. "Smile." I forced a smile. I stared into the dead glass eye of the camera and grinned like a maniac. Another line popped up. "That's not real. Make it real." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought I'd crack a molar. I slapped my own face, punched myself in the chest. "Good," they wrote. Then they made me stand up, stripped down to my underwear. "Let us see what you really are." I didn't even question how they controlled my system. They were past code. This wasn't malware. It was something else entirely. My screen flashed white, then went black. Then the chat appeared again. A new prompt. Family next. Who do we watch? They showed thumbnails from my family's security cameras. My dad asleep, my mom at the kitchen sink, my younger cousin gaming in his room. I was supposed to pick. I refused. I begged again. Typed, please kill me instead. The cursor blinked for 10 seconds before typing, not yet. I couldn't sit down. The chair had become too hot. Or maybe I was imagining it. My laptop fan was making noises like a dying animal. Everything smelled like metal and sweat. They asked me to dance. I did. I stood naked in my room and danced. Then they told me to cry. I did that too. I let it all out in front of the camera like some zoo animal. They showed me my brother again, still slumped in the chair. Then they rewound the footage, played his death backward and forward. They looped it. My screen was filled with his last moments. Watch it 10 times, they said. If you look away, Mom goes next. The 10th replay made me throw up. I didn't even try to clean it. I just sat in it. They didn't talk for a while after that. Maybe they were watching. Maybe they were laughing. I didn't care anymore. Then a new command. Open your closet. I didn't want to, but I did. There was nothing there. But then my screen changed. It was showing a camera feed inside my own closet. Not a pre-recorded video. Live. I saw myself from behind. I turned around, but no one was there. I slammed the door shut. Typed back, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. They replied, we're not. The room felt like a box filling with water. Not literally, but that slow pressure. Like I was sinking without moving. I started hitting random keys, trying to crash the client. Alt plus F4, Control plus Alt plus Delete. Nothing worked. The chat stayed open, lines still coming. All I could do was cry and give up. I fell to the ground accepting that I was going to die. I didn't know if these were ghosts, hackers, whatever. All I could think about was that I was going to die. And even worse, I would get more people killed. Not just any people, my family. I fell into my own snot and tears. I was destroyed. The chat slowed. You are pathetic. You're boring us, it said. I didn't know what that meant. I begged for more time, begged to be interesting, begged like a dog. They didn't reply. The webcam light turned off. The client minimized itself. My wallpaper came back. Everything looked normal. And that was it. It was all over there. No more deep web, no more ghosts, nothing. I turned off the computer in tears. I unplugged it as if that would solve anything. After that, I could only fall into my bed and cry myself to sleep. I couldn't bring myself to call my brother. I knew he was no longer with us. I wasn't ready to be the one to discover his corpse. All I did was sleep and pray that when I woke up, the computer hadn't turned itself on.